Wednesday PFTPM from the barn continues with the man who will always be known, at least by me, as the guy who found Patrick Mahomes. He is Chiefs General Manager Brett Veach. Brett, welcome back to the program. How are you, pal?
Mike, thanks for having me on. Excited to share some time with you here, and I'm doing good. And now that the draft's over here, we can all take a deep breath and have a sigh of relief.
Well, I have a quiz for you. A pop quiz, because we did not discuss this in advance. I want to know if you know the grade that Mel Kiper gave your 2017 draft. Do you know what that grade is?
I do not. No, I don't.
Do you want to make a guess?
I'll keep it right down the middle and say B.
C plus.
Okay.
Yeah. The draft that brought Patrick Mahomes to town and Kareem Hunt. And my point here isn't to bag on Mel, but this is a continuation of something I was talking to Howie Roseman about yesterday. The idea that this whole process of even trying to grade drafts is impossible because we don't know and we won't know how these guys work out until it's time to go line up on a field against other NFL caliber talent, grown-ass men, and how those guys react in that setting will let us know whether or not it's a good pick.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, these guys have to come in here and, all the stuff that we watched and evaluated on tape, certain teams will have different beliefs in regards to how they see players, but we're certainly excited about the group we brought in. And I do want to, give you a little tip of the cap there, right toward, I would say, the 24th hour going into this draft. Typically right before the draft, you have an indication of maybe not exactly who you're going to get, but two or three guys. And, when I had a chance to talk to Coach Reed, the guy that we ended up really kind of figuring out that this would make sense for us was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then I think 2 hours later, you posted your one and only mock, and that's who you had us taken. So I sent that to Coach. So of all the draft experts, you guys got that one right, huh?
Well, first of all, the blind squirrel feasts on acorn from time to time. Second of all, I don't do the mock draft. I have somebody who used to be an NFL personnel who puts it together for me. And this year especially, I wasn't in a position to second guess because who the hell knew how it was going to play out this year, because there wasn't that groupthink that we usually get from the pro day workouts when people get together and compare notes. Chris Sims also had Clyde Edwards-Helaire at number 32. So we both pegged it, even though I really didn't peg it. But Chris was all over Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the best running back in the class. You obviously agreed. When you hear that kind of stuff before the draft, when, the momentum is pushing toward DeAndre Swift, and he was the betting favorite, and he was the guy everyone was saying would be the first running back taken. When you see someone like Sims saying Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the best, when you see him show up being given to you at pick number 32 in mock drafts, what do you do? Do you cringe? Do you worry? Do you think you may have to trade up to get him? How does that affect you?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. There's so many of these guys, that do this, and certainly we felt the same as Chris. But there's so many guys that do this. So if you go down that alley, I mean, where does it stop and start, and where does it end? So I think we all take notice of that kind of stuff, and we do look at it. But at the end of the day, we're going to stick to our beliefs and what we value on our board and what we think is best for the Chiefs. But I mean, sure, you're going to see a lot of these things. But like I said, there's so many of them out there that sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't.
As you prepared for and executed this draft, Brett, did you feel less pressure because you guys are the champs, you've got Patrick Mahomes no matter what, even if none of the picks work out, you've still got Mahomes? Or did you feel more pressure because once he gets that second contract, the lifeblood of your team is going to be the draft picks who are under rookie wage scale contracts, low cost, fit under the salary cap? We got to hit on these guys. We got to get contributors out of these guys, or it's not going to work around a highly paid quarterback.
Yeah, I certainly think that, you always feel pressure. And I don't think that because we won a Super Bowl, we felt less. So I would say that every year and every draft, there's a lot of pressure to do the homework and make the best evaluations you can. I would say, if anything, there was a little bit more pressure. Like you said, there are some guys that we have to figure out their contracts. And the best way to keep this thing rolling is to, add in young talent on rookie contracts. So I would say, if anything, there was more pressure. Really that, and I think that the stress and probably the unknown of after the draft, the free agency period, was something that I think we all got to a mindset of going into the draft that once we got the communication, I thought the league did a pretty good job of getting us up to speed and everything ran smoothly. We were really worried about, the undrafted free agent period. As you know, that gets a little crazy. But I think entering the draft, we certainly understood, the magnitude of obtaining talent that is going to sustain this thing as we work through some of these star players on our roster with bigger contracts.
How much different was the undrafted free agent period, that process of engaging in the land rush for the guys who weren't picked? How different was it this year than it is in a normal year?
Well, it's always crazy. And, I think in normal years, when you're in a facility, you have the ability to pass off the phone and talk to your medical people and recruit players, because once you get to the end of the draft, all 32 teams are on the clock for a player, and not like, you have the time to figure out what you want to do. And sometimes these players, they're trying to figure out what's the best fit for them, where they want to go, working with their agents. And by the time they get back to you, with a no, the next 3 or 4 guys are off the board. But I think in a weird way, Mike, and we joked about this before the draft, not having a 6th and 7th round pick. Now we ended up trading back into the 7th, but at the time, our last pick was in the 5th round. So that gave us some lead in time. So we were really able to kind of look at the landscape and project where guys would be. And once we got off the clock, we knew exactly where we wanted to go. That kind of logic led into us trading back in, because looking at the corners that were left in the 6th and 7th round, we figured the player we selected wouldn't be there. So, give credit to my staff. I think that, we devoted a lot of time into the after the draft free agency process, and I think that we were able to come away with some good players.
Give me something that you were worried about, Brett, something that was causing you to lose sleep about how this draft was going to unfold that ended up being no big deal at all.
Yeah, it was the last second trade type scenario. I think that was the one thing. I think, we had our board, and, we were fortunate that, we spent 16 or 17 days as a staff before the combine to really lay down the foundation of our board. So 80% of our board was done before the combine. Now we had some back end work to do, and we had to devote some additional resources to getting more information and doing a lot of Zoom chats and doing stuff with the medical. But when we finally got to the draft, after the league gave us a good 2-week window to kind of prep and do some demo runs on making calls and talking to teams, we felt really confident. I think the one thing that I was concerned about was, okay, we're on the clock, we have a player we like, and then maybe with like 45 seconds, a team would call with an interesting trade proposal, and then just making sure that everybody's on the same page in Zoom chats, as opposed to being there in real time, and certainly making sure we didn't lose a connection. But the league was also very cooperative in the sense that, they let us know that if you did have a technical issue right toward the end, that they would be lenient and just be open and communicate with them. So that was probably the one scenario, but it never really came into play.
Well, and as it always seems to go in the real world, it's the thing you worry about that isn't an issue, and it's the thing you didn't worry about that becomes an issue. Is there something that wasn't on your radar screen that during the draft you realized, holy crap, I should have been ready for this?
I think every year it's probably being at a selection when there are a few more guys available there than you thought. We all try to, and for the most part, the first round goes relatively on point. But once you get into rounds 2 or 3, you're kind of in your mind eyeing guys that you're like, this guy I think will be there. We're excited. He'd help us. And then all of a sudden, you get to that pick, and there's another 2 guys that you probably projected to go a little higher. Now they're there. And so balancing out, can you trade back? In which direction do you go? And that's where all that advanced dialogue comes into play. And that's where, once you set the board, you stick true to it. So there was a few scenarios where, we kind of targeted guys in specific rounds. Guys tended to fall a little bit lower and then were available to us. And those are the scenarios that happen every year, though.
We talked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back from LSU. What would you say to placate the concerns of any fans out there who are of that mindset that an NFL team should never use a first-round pick on a running back, that they can be found anywhere? You shouldn't burn up that high of a pick on a guy that you can get in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through to undrafted free agency like an Arian Foster. What do you say to the folks who would insist, no way, no how, should you use a first-round pick on a running back?
Well, I think every draft is different, and every evaluation is different in regards to how you process this information. I think that most teams, in general, taking the quarterback out of the equation because the quarterback's the ultimate anomaly, but most teams operate with the mindset of you're going to build, through the middle. So you're going to build O-line, D-line, and then work on the corners. And we're no different in that we operate with that mindset too. So we're always going to look to solidify our offensive line and our defensive line. In fact, I think if you looked at what we've done since I got here, we've devoted a ton of resources up front on the defensive line. And, what we did in the draft with our offensive line acquisitions certainly speaks to that. But I think that when you enter the first round of this draft and you're being true with your evaluations, there's always going to be an outlier to every scenario you're in. So when you're there in the first round and you have a mindset of how you want to build the team, and then you're also faced with the question of, but there's this, what we believe to be a franchise running back, a true playmaker, and another addition to add with Pat Mahomes, I think that comes into play. So it's really our evaluation of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and what we think of him and his ability. And is he a guy that you can just find in the 4th or 5th round, or is he someone special and unique? And we certainly viewed him as someone special and unique.
Damian Williams was your leading rusher last year. He had the 90-yard touchdown run in the win over Minnesota. He had the back-breaking touchdown in the Super Bowl victory. Have you or Coach Reid spoken to him about what this draft pick of Clyde Edwards-Helaire means to Damian Williams?
Yeah, so, I got a chance to speak with his agent and, reached out to him via text. And I know Coach reached out to him via text right before the pick. And then I think he followed up with him recently in the last few days. But, look, these guys are all super competitive. And I think like any player in this league, when a team drafts someone at your position, I don't think they're doing backflips and high fives. And I think that the competitiveness certainly comes out. But I think once these guys come in the building, and once you get this thing rolling, I think, everyone kind of gels as a cohesive unit. But our situation is good for certainly Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Damian, because these guys will be really good complementary players to one another.
And that's really the question, too. Is it Clyde Edwards-Helaire becoming the workhorse, or do you see it more of a shared load between Edwards-Helaire and Williams?
No, I certainly think it's going to be a shared load. Listen, Damian has been in this offense now for a long time and certainly showed what he can do in that playoff run. The guy's really good pass protector, can catch the football. Both these guys, can run and catch. And certainly Damian will come in as a starting running back, and Clyde will have to come in here and compete for playing time, which we think he'll do. But I think it'll be a good 1-2 punch.
One of the realities of the pandemic that I hadn't thought about really until just before we got this started, Brett, a ring ceremony for the Kansas City Chiefs. What are the plans in light of the fact that things are still kind of upside down with the coronavirus?
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer for that. I'm sure Clark Hunt and Mark Donovan are on top of that, and I'd like to think that they didn't want to really interrupt Coach and I during this process here, but we were just locked in with the free agency process before the draft, and then locked in really with all the technology prior to the draft here. So I don't know about that, but I'm sure that once we get back to a full operating capacity, that'll be something we all look forward to.
One of the issues that's come up, Brett, in the wake of the pandemic and the likelihood that the offseason programs will be gone, or at least limited, very limited at most, signing your draft picks. We've seen since 2011, a lot of teams jump on it early. They get their picks signed. Do you have a strategy that's been revised to fit the current reality as to whether or not you're going to move forward? You're going to wait? Do you have a timetable for when you're going to sign these guys?
Yeah, I think that, we'll probably just proceed as we have in the past. I think we have a little bit of a window here. It doesn't look like we'll be in the office anytime soon. So I'm sure that there in the past were weeks where we probably came out very soon and got some of these guys done right away. I'm sure there'll probably be a little bit of a holdover in regards to both parties just assessing all the information, made available to at the time. So, I don't think this will hold things up, but I do think that there'll be some extra time given to make sure that we have all the information in regards to how everything's going to proceed as we move on here.
Linebacker Willie Gay Jr. was your second-round pick. Tell us what attracted you to him.
Well, that's a really interesting player. Obviously, a supremely gifted athlete. when we had the pre-combine meetings with our scouting staff, I mean, he kind of jumped off tape. Now, he had the academic issue where he was suspended and the tape was a little choppy. But I think if you look at what he was able to do in those 4 or 5 games and then go back to last year, the guy certainly has, a crazy athletic skill set, has range, has versatility. I think he can cover extremely well. And then also because he's a bigger type prospect that's a little longer, he can also play Sam or Will for us. So we were really excited about that. And then he goes to the combine. He put on performance that, was as good as any linebacker's performance in the last 5-10 years here. So we certainly think that there'll be a little bit of a learning curve with Willie just because, he hasn't taken a large volume of reps in college, but the limited amount of reps he did have at that level were super impressive. And we certainly know that his ceiling is extremely high given his athletic testing numbers.
One of the benefits for the Chiefs in 2020, bringing back so many of the starters from the team that won Super Bowl 54. Is there a downside, though, to having that much continuity and that there's a greater chance of complacency when you don't maybe have a new guy who joins the team, a veteran who's hungry for a ring that maybe keeps guys from getting satisfied in what happened last year? How do you guard against that complacency when you have so many of those starters coming back who had just climbed to the top of the mountain and are back at the bottom trying to climb the same mountain again?
Yeah, you trust the leadership you have in your locker room, and you're right to the point that when we lost to New England in the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago, that fire and that drive kind of fueled our entire offseason. Not just the players, but what we did as an organization in regards to being aggressive and making moves. But we came so close, and we were driven by that fire. Like you said, now that you've gotten there and you won the Super Bowl, we have to do a great job of maintaining that same level of focus and aggressiveness that put us in the position that we're in. So I think these are the times, and when you have success, you really fall back on the leadership you have in that locker room. And I think having Pat Mahomes on the offensive side and Tyrann Mathieu on the defensive side is what we're really going to bank on.
The Patrick Mahomes contract comes up from time to time. Do you have a timetable for when there will be an effort to get him under contract well into the future?
Well, I mean, certainly being the best player in the NFL goes to the top of the list for us. I don't know if we can put a timetable with both him and a player like Chris Jones. You're talking about really two players that are at the top of their positions, and these are going to be, the contracts are going to certainly be on the larger scale of things, and they'll take some time. But, Chris is a little bit different than Pat because, he has a deadline of there's a July 15th deadline to get something done. But I think with both players now here, now that the draft's over and we have some time now to kind of shift gears and look toward what we hope is a full offseason. And certainly we don't know and no one does. But we'll be able to kind of turn our resources and our focus into working with these two camps to get both players done.
And it is such a deadline-driven business, Brett, that with Chris Jones, it's easy. It's July 15. That's the deadline for a multi-year deal. That's when everybody knows the clock is going to hit midnight. For Patrick Mahomes, though, you have a broader period of time that you can play with. Are you getting any agitation, any frustration, any sense from Mahomes' side that they want to do it now?
No, not at all. But, I'm certainly – we know that we would like to get something done sooner than later, and I certainly know that they feel the same way. When you kind of go through the last few months here, I think we've all realized that it's been a crazy time for the whole country. So with a crazy free agency period combined with a new, never been done before virtual draft, certainly in our early dialogue with Pat and his representatives, we kind of knew that once things settled down, we'd be able to open up dialogue and proceed. But I mean, look, we all want to get it done. It'll take time, like all these big deals do. But I guess the best thing to say, Mike, is he'll be a Kansas City Chiefs for the duration of his career, and we feel confident about that. One
of the challenges you have as a practical matter, Brett, and like you said, so much has changed, so much is happening. You got to plan for how the world is going to unfold. And if we do have a season with no fans in the stands or limited fans in the stands, that's going to affect the bottom line. That's going to affect the salary cap for 2021. How much of that planning goes into play when you get to the point, whether it's negotiating Chris Jones, Patrick Mahomes, or anybody, the possibility that the cap may actually go down. We've never seen it go down, and you're going to have less dollars available for everyone, and you want to be careful how much gets tied up into your highest paid players.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's certainly an excellent point. And I think, as you mentioned, any player that you're looking to do, and whether it be the Chiefs or any team, we're all dealing with the same information. And there's a great part of this is the unknown. So I think that, patience will certainly have to come into play here in regards to just making sure that, we monitor certainly what's going on throughout the country, getting great dialogue from the league as we proceed. But we are in a little bit of a tricky window here where we're kind of just projecting in a lot of ways of, how many games will we play, when we'll start, will this be a full season, will there be fans? And really none of those questions we have any definitive answers to right now. So there is a little bit of a holding pattern here, and we'll certainly utilize that holding pattern to acquire all the information we can to make good decisions moving forward. But you're right to the point of how all these things could come into play 2-3 years down the line.
One thing I need to ask you about before I let you go, the Bashaud Breeland arrest. I hadn't seen a team statement on that. Is there any comment whatsoever on the news out of, I believe, South Carolina or North Carolina of the incident with Bashaud Breeland?
Yeah, so we were made aware of the situation yesterday, and, we're certainly going to defer to the league and the local authorities down there, and we'll do what we always do. We'll kind of look at all the information and have great communication and dialogue with the league, and kind of let the situation work itself out.
It's got to be frustrating too. In a normal situation, you'd be able to bring him in, sit him down, talk to him, see how he's doing. That's one of the questions that never gets asked in a situation like this. How are you doing? You've just been arrested. It's a contentious situation. Is there anything we can do to help you? You can't have that in-person conversation. It's got to be harder to take the temperature of where a guy is.
Well, certainly. And, just in general, though, I think all these guys are anxious to get back into their facilities. It's funny, Mike, over the years, a lot of these guys after the season don't really want to come back, and you always have that, is he going to show up for OTAs, is he's not? I feel like this year we have so many players calling and just dying to get back. So this may end up being a good thing for the league moving forward in regards to, I think the guys are actually missing OTAs, where in the past, some of these guys would rather be on extended vacations.
It's got to be a real concern, though, when guys show up for training camp. I'm sure one of the first jobs is to get the doctors and the trainers to know what kind of shape each guy's in, because I think every guy's going to come in some different level of shape without that regimen, without that structure that we ordinarily would have in the offseason.
Yeah, you're right. And, especially for, when every team is different in regards to how they run training camp, we have certainly a very demanding training camp. And, coach is still a little bit old school in regards to the volume of things that we get done in that time window there. So we've had a lot of talk and early dialogue in regards to making sure that we have some, advanced medical setup ready to go for our players. But I certainly think that there'll be potentially a window of lead-in time before camp opens, just to make sure that these guys get all the proper medical attention they need, and make sure that we can get a baseline of physical conditioning for where these guys are at to keep them all safe and healthy.
Well, hopefully the people whose job it is to come up with plans for a football season will come up with a plan to make it happen. You'll get to open the season at home on a Thursday night, hopefully in early September, and we'll get to see if the Chiefs can become the first back-to-back champions since the Patriots in 2003 and 2004. Brett, congratulations again on the Super Bowl victory, and all the best. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
Mike, I appreciate it, and I hope you and your family are doing well, and hope we can catch up soon.
All right, same to you, Brett. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.